Welcome back. I'm still working on some puzzles. Hopefully I have the microphone turned on this time, and it looks like I do. So here in this position, the first thing I will look for is checks. I do not see any. My queen does not have a path to check the king. Neither do any of my rooks. It looks like I can attack the knight, but then the knight, would just move. I can push a pawn. My opponent has two connected passed pawns with power pieces behind them. So I'm not sure what the best move is here. One option that looks intriguing or enticing is to capture this pawn with my rook. And my thinking is, if the queen recaptures, which it probably won't, but let's say that it does, and I capture back, if they capture my queen with this pawn, I get this rook with check, and I have a passed pawn. But that's not great, because let's see, I would get and if it went that way, I would get a pawn and a queen and a rook, while the opponent would get a rook and a queen. So I would only be up a pawn in that case. And this pawn would be here. And I would say check. Well, and then I could get behind that pawn. So that looks promising, but I'm going to think about this for a minute. Okay, another option that looks promising is if I capture this pawn, if they take back with the pawn, then I would first say check, taking the rook. No, I don't think that works either, because then again I've just gained a pawn with a rook trade, right? Because I've lost this rook, they've lost that rook, and I've taken this pawn. So that doesn't look great. I know one option would be to push this passed pawn, but the opponent can easily attack it here. And then if I pushed again, they could just put the knight behind it. So that doesn't look good either. And I'm starting to wonder if there's not something that I've missed. But I'm pretty sure I haven't missed any checks. There's just no way I can say I can check black in this position. I don't know why I keep saying say check when it's just check. But anyway, yeah, so far that looks like the most promising option. So I'm just going to try it, because otherwise I'm going to spend too much time on this. That was it. Okay, then I will capture the a8 rook with check. It moved out of check, as I expected that it would. I do not have a follow-up check. And my opponent still has a passed pawn with the queen behind it. Again, one option is to push this pawn. Honestly, I did not. I expected that there would be more to that than. I mean, I didn't expect that there would be more to that. So let me give this position a think. Well, having thought about it, the only real things I can think of are to push this pawn, and it would be 2 squares from promotion. It would be guarded. Another thing that I could think of is to bring the rook back to get it in front of this pawn. Because putting the rook behind the pawn doesn't help much. I mean, not there obviously right now, because the queen is there. There's the option of putting my queen in front of the passed pawn, But that's putting the queen in a defensive mode, which she doesn't need to be in. And also it unguards this pawn, which the knight then could attack, which would then leave this pawn unguarded, and therefore that pawn could fall too. So yeah, moving the queen here to stop this pawn is foolhardy. So again, I think my choices are to push this pawn or to bring this rook back to get in front of this pawn. But because it's a puzzle, and I've done a bunch of these puzzles, I don't think this rook move is the best, because the puzzles almost never favor what looks like a retreating move or a hunching down into defense mode. So I am convinced that it's something else. Yeah, I'm just going to push the pawn and probably going to be wrong here. Yeah, I was wrong just because I couldn't see what to do. So let's click the hint button. It was the rook coming. It was the rook coming back. Oh my goodness. Okay, and then that, and then this. See, and that's probably what I would have done in a game. One of those two. It would have been either the pawn or bringing the rook back to guard. But just out of curiosity, what would have happened in that situation had I... okay, we went there. They did this. I said check. I checked the black king. It went here. Now, in a game, okay, according to that evaluation, the rook to a1 is the only move that maintains an advantage for white. What does this do? That just drops the eval like crazy. And because of this, and there's really nothing I can do about that. Okay, that's why I had to stop the pawn. Okay, well, let's return to this. Let's go to the next puzzle before we waste too much more time. It looks like I only lost 4 points for that, which is unusual. Maybe because I got the first 2 moves right. Let's see. Here, I do have a check, which is the first thing I look for. The king cannot get out of check because my knight blocks off this square and my queen would block these 2 squares. So it looks like the only legal move, if I checked here, the white queen would have to block. I believe that would be the only legal move. And then I can check here, bishop to g5. Because I can't, or I shouldn't do that first. If I did that first, then the king can go here, and I don't have the option. Wait. If I check first with the bishop, my queen and bishop both are looking at this square. My knight guards this square. That would leave the only legal move, because nothing can block that check. Only legal move. And nope, I can't. Oh goodness, I can't be mate because of this knight. Okay, so yeah, I got to do the queen first, which forces this. Then that's mate, right? No, the knight would block. The knight would block that. Okay, so maybe neither of those is the best move here. Let me think about this for a second. Okay, I've had some time to think about this, but I'm still a little confused because with this check, there's only one legal response. This forces the queen to block. And then my only follow-up check is bishop to g5, which I think would force the knight to block. And then I would be stuck, I think. Because if I captured the knight, the queen would capture whatever I captured the knight with, and then we would just lose those pieces. And the opponent is up on pieces. I'm down at this point. It looks like. I mean, we're both missing a rook, but the opponent has an extra minor piece right now. So just trading 2 pieces doesn't work. If I check first with the bishop, there are 2 legal moves. One is the knight blocking, which would be bad because it would result in mate. But the other would be the king moving over. And then I don't have a follow-up check here because the king is sitting right next to it and would just capture it. So I don't think it's the bishop first. Because of that, the king just gets out of check. I mean, I could follow here, but then the pawn just blocks me. So I don't think the bishop first is it, but the queen first. Forces the queen to block. There's no other choice. And then my only follow-up is the bishop, right? And the knight blocks. And if I try to, put pressure on that pinned knight, the pawn just takes it. I don't have anything. So I'm lost here. I mean, unless I can castle. Can I castle? I'm not going to try that. If you watched a couple of videos, like the only way I could find out whether castling was legal was to try it, so I failed the puzzle. I'm going to try the queen move first because it is more forcing, and we'll see what happens. Okay, that was it. I could just trade queens here, but then I don't have any follow-up check. So my only follow-up check is this. Wait, yeah, because, I mean, that just loses to the pawn or the knight blocking. This check just loses to the knight or the pawn. If I capture the queen, the king captures back, and that's the end of this play. So it has to be the bishop, right? I mean, there's a pawn hanging here, but I guess going here protects this pawn first. Okay, usually they only do this when they think it's mate, but why didn't the knight just block? That's my question. Oh, because if the knight blocked, I would take it. And the king can't capture because the queen is guarding it. And the queen can't capture because it's pinned. So now it okay. Well, I got 5 points for that, which was 1 more point than I lost on the previous puzzle. So I'm 1 point ahead after 13 minutes. Let's keep going and see what happens. Okay. I do not have any checks in this position. If this pawn were not here, I could move my pawn forward. Nope, that would not be a discovered check. See, I'm really bad at diagonals. Good grief. That would not be a check at all. Let's see. I can't move this knight because it's pinned. The queen is pinning it here. I can take a hanging pawn and threaten the rook. But I don't know what that would accomplish. If I guess I would still be guarding this pawn from there, and I would still be guarding this pawn. But I would not be guarding this pawn anymore. So yeah, if I took this, well, they couldn't just take that pawn because the rook would be in danger. So the rook would have to go somewhere. Because that looks like the only capture I have available right now is that pawn. That's why I'm looking at that. Checks, captures, threats. So, capture. They're going to move the rook somewhere. I mean, maybe move it here to get it to safety, or they could move it here, I guess. The queen and the pawn would guard it at that point, and then what would I do? I guess if it did that, then I would continue on down and check the king. Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to try that just because I don't see a lot of other options, and there's no checks. There are no other captures that I can see, so I need to make a threat on a piece, and taking that pawn threatens a piece. So I'm going to do a capture of a pawn and threaten the rook and see if that's it. That was not it. I lost 14 points. Retry puzzle. What was it? It was a queen move. It was to move the queen way over here and threaten the rook. Why is that better? Why in the monkeys behind is that better? Okay. Now I can't. Now the pawn's still there. See, they could have done that. I could have taken the pawn and the rook could have moved over, but oh, the bishop is hanging. That's what it was. It was a fork. Okay. It was a fork. Back to the original position. Here I just get a pawn and an empty threat on the rook, which can move somewhere. Here I threaten the rook and the bishop, and they can't protect both of them. Okay. Well, I understood that. Let's keep going. We're going backwards in points, as usual. Now we're in 1963. Okay. I do have a check, which looks like it just loses. Wait. Yesterday I had a bunch of sacrifices, so let me think about this. I lose a queen, but gain a rook, and this rook now comes up here. Then, if I followed, no, I wouldn't follow. I would leave the bishop here, right? Check. The king can't move. I mean, well, it could, but then I would just take the other rook and it would be mate. So that's not going to happen. Check. Recapture. Now that rook is pinned from this bishop to the king, and this pawn guards this square, and then I would bring this rook down to d8. Check. And the rook could not block, and that would be mate. So I'm going to try that. Okay. Just as I suspected, the rook is pinned. The queen has to block, and that's checkmate. Okay. Gained 5 points for that. We did not hit the target time of 17 seconds. Come on. Yeah. I'm in check. And my queen is hanging. But I can capture this with my bishop. But my queen is still hanging. That makes me sad. I mean, obviously I would recapture. Oh, and then I would lose the bishop anyway. So that's just a trade. But I can't do anything else right now. I have to move out of check. If I just move out of check with the king, then they capture my queen for a knight. But if I capture the knight, is that just an even trade with a discovered attack on my queen and the rook is hanging at that point? Wow. And I can't do a desperado move here like that or this or something because I'm in check. So I only have two choices. Get out of check or capture. And I'm going to capture. Okay, we lost the queen this way. So, the question is, do we take with the pawn, which gives us connected passed outside, not passed, but connected outside pawns, but block off the rook? That's got to be it, because if we take with the rook, these pawns are islands, and we lose the rook. Oh, but it still connects, but then we've lost a rook. And we're going to lose this anyway, right? I can't protect that bishop. And if I try to move the bishop now, like here, then then what happens? That's not, I shouldn't worry about the bishop. I should take the queen, right? That's a no-brainer. That has to be a no-brainer. Okay, so now I'm still down material. No, we're even on material. Traded a knight. I've traded a bishop for a knight and a queen for a queen. So we're even on material so far, but there's something else, and it's got to be the hanging knight, right? It's got to be the hanging knight. Well, because I mean, I got to move this bishop anyway. It's in trouble. Okay, 1973. Maybe one more puzzle will get me above where I ended yesterday, where I started today. The king has come out toward the center of the board because the king is very brave, and we applaud the king for that. You know, if this knight wasn't here, that would be checkmate, right? Because the pawn guards that spot, and the queen would cut off both of the rank file and the diagonal. That's not a diagonal. This is a diagonal. So if we put this bishop here first, maybe, because I don't want to put the queen here or here because the knight is there. So I think, in my incredible wisdom, that I should put the bishop there first, because the king still can't go to here because of the pawns, queen, 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 and then the bishop. So there would be forced to capture or block. Block. Right? And if it captured, then I go here and that's mate. And if it blocks, then I go there and that's mate. Okay, this is checkmate, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I'm going to stop because I've netted 2 points today. Thank you for watching, and we'll get you next time.